to read all about it. The Roaring Twenties. The Roaring Twenties. Everything was got a must. Advertising everywhere. The Roaring Twenties.
The culture of the Roaring Twenties was characterized by popular tastes, values, and habits of mass consumption that were increasingly at odds with the strict religious and moral codes of traditional America. One circumstance in which a rebellion was evident was a movement for the repeal of prohibition.
The decisive vote of the 36th state against prohibition is happy news for the grain raisers of the United States and for many others throughout the land. With an eye on December 5th, work is being rushed in distilleries and bottling works. Thousands are being called back to work in plants of allied industries. At least 500,000 new jobs are predicted as the result of repeal.
Wartime concerns to conserve grain and maintain a sober workforce led Congress to pass the 18th Amendment, which strictly prohibited the sale and manufacture of alcoholic beverages. Prohibition by no means stopped people from drinking alcohol. Alcohol was still made available through a bootlegging trade that gangs, such as headed by Al Capone, fought to control. These illegal methods were conveyed through the clubs and bars known as speakeasies, where bootleg liquor was sold. The repeal of the 18th Amendment and Prohibition was finally accomplished by the ratification of the 21st Amendment, which was passed in 1933. Hard liquor was consumed in large volumes by both men and women, representing a change in the gender roles of the time. While it was previously unacceptable for women to drink alcohol, it gradually became commonplace for them to frequent their speakeasies. Following the 19th Amendment, which granted women suffrage, women became increasingly involved in a revolt against sexual taboos. A special fashion that set them apart from older generations was the flapper look. This look was characterized by dresses hemmed at the knee, bobbed haircuts, smoking cigarettes, and driving cars, all of which shocked the older generation. Many prominent women emerged during this period, including Margaret Sanger, who advocated the use of birth control and achieved growing acceptance during this time. Other aspects of this rebellion were expressed by dancing to jazz music. This new style of music was initiated by North African American musicians as a symbol of the new and modern culture of these cities. Many of these African Americans established themselves in New York City. This area flourished in artistic achievement and became known as the Harlem Renaissance. The leading Harlem poets expressed a variety of emotions ranging from bitterness and anger to happiness and hope. Many famous poets and singers, such as Bessie Smith and Langston Hughes, emerged during this period. Marcus Garvey, another eminent figure that arose during the 1920s, led the United Negro Improvement Association. He developed ideas of black nationalism that advocated individual and racial pride. He established an organization for black separatism, economic self-sufficiency, and a Back to Africa movement. Later, he was deported to Jamaica, and his movement collapsed. Other forms of poetry and literature during this era were known as the Lost Generation. The name emerged from the dominant themes of condemning wartime, scorning religion, and the materialism of a business-oriented culture. The novels of F. Scott Fitzgerald, Ernest Hemingway, and Sinclair Lewis, and the poems of Ezra Pound and T.S. Eliot express disillusionment with the ideals of the earlier time. Many parts of American culture rapidly flourished. The The economy was also on the rise. More than anything during the 1920s, the automobile changed the American lifestyle. By the end of the decade, a total of 26.5 million automobiles were registered, an average of almost one car per family. Economically, the car replaced the railroad as a key promoter of economic growth, and other industries began to depend on automobile sales. Americans began to concentrate on adapting to the economic growth of the decade. America experienced a long period of business prosperity in which unemployment was generally below 4%. The business boom was fueled by an increased productivity, including improved methods of mass production, energy technologies such as oil-free gasoline, and government policies that favored the growth of big businesses. The standard of living rose significantly for many Americans. However, not everyone took part in the prosperity of the 1920s. In particular, farmers who had benefited from a wartime economy were left with a heavy burden of debt. As the economy of America thrived, it appealed to a large influx of immigrants. New arrivals were mainly Catholic and Jews from Eastern and Southern Europe. As immigration shot upward, native workers feared competition for jobs. Isolationists saw immigrants as radicals who might foment revolution. As a result, Congress passed laws that severely limited immigration by setting quotas based on nationality. The first Quota Act of 1921 limited immigration to 3% of the number of foreign-born persons from a given nation counted in the 1910 census. In 1924, Congress passed a second Quota Act to ensure that the law would discriminate against immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe. These quotas limited immigration to 2% based on the census of 1890. The Quota Acts mostly restricted the groups thought to be undesirable by the nativists. Canadians and Latin Americans were exempt from restrictions. Another case of extreme nativism was apparent in the case of Sacco and Vanzetti. In 1921, two Italian immigrants, Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti, were convicted of committing robbery and murder. Many liberals protested that the two men were innocent and had been accused, convicted, and sentenced to die on the basis that they were poor Italians and anarchists. After 6 years of appeals and debates, Sacco and Vanzetti were executed in 1927. Nativism was largely expressed in the 1920s resurgence of the KKK. This new KKK discriminated against not just African Americans, but against Jews, Catholics, and foreigners, and suspected communists as well. The Klan terrorized targeted un-Americans by disguising themselves with white hoods and burning crosses, or punishing victims with whips, tar, and feathers, or even a hangman's noose. Initially, many native-born white Americans tolerated the KKK because of its allegiance to the higher standards of Christian morality and its promise to drive out bootleggers, gamblers, and adulterers. However, corruption and fraud with the Klan was later unveiled. The Klan's power declined, yet it remained a strong force of white supremacy. In addition to the friction between nativists and immigrants, divisions in America were evident between fundamentalists and modernists. This debate was the focus of a highly publicized trial in Tennessee in 1925. Tennessee had made the teaching of Darwin's theory of evolution in public schools illegal. A biology teacher, John Scopes, challenged the constitutionality of this law by teaching evolution to his high school class. As a result, Scopes was arrested and brought to a trial in which he was defended by lawyer Clarence Darrow. On the opposing side, Democratic presidential candidate William Jennings Bryan represented the fundamentalists as a Bible expert. Scopes was convicted, but this was later overturned on a technicality. The connection between religion and public schools remains a controversial issue to this present day. The Roaring Twenties were marked by social and cultural conflicts stemming from divisions between modernists and fundamentalists. In changing society during this era was evident in the advocacy of birth control, nativism, flappers, jazz, and the fight for the repeal of the prohibition. The controversies of the time have extended to the present day.
Things that bother you never bother me. I think everything's fine. Living in the sunlight, loving in the moonlight, having a wonderful time. Haven't got a lot, I don't need a lot. Coffee's only a dime.